Hello, Lions Nation. Welcome to another edition of Bleav In Lions. It's brought to you by FanDuel. I'm Trevor Thompson, joined as always by Lions former All-Pro safety Glover Quinn, who looks back at a season that did not go the way we thought it would. Glover, the Lions finish 9-8, and when we had Lomas Brown on last year, we talked about how different being out of the playoffs and finishing 9-8 feels this time as compared to when they finished 9-8 and missed the playoffs just a few seasons ago. And when you look at what they did not yesterday, but Sunday against the Chicago Bears on the road, a big 19-16 last-second field goal winner, that felt good. But the rest of the season, looking back, may not feel as good. What are your thoughts when you look back at not only that game but this season on the whole?
Well, you look at this last game, you just wonder, where was that at down the stretch, right? And, they played well on the road. They executed defensively. They held Chicago to 16 points, I think. I mean, Chicago has been putting up points, and, offensively we were able to find Amon had a big day, and Jahmyr came through with some big plays, and, it just looks like they simplified things and played to who they were. We saw David Montgomery probably more than we've seen him in the last few weeks. He seemed to have a bigger role in the game, and I just feel like yesterday they played to the identity of who we thought they were, just a tough football team, downhill type of guys, play action, big plays here or there, and defensively you're doing enough to get stops. And it's disappointing that you can finish the season like that, beating the number 2 team in the conference, on the road in their house, and realize that this is what could have been. And now we're going home, and that team is continuing on. And so it's kind of bittersweet, right? You're happy to end the season on a good note, but you're disappointed, right? Like you say, a few years ago, you finished in 9-8. You're happy going into the offseason. You're on the high horse, like, man, we're on the come up, right? We're doing our thing. And, after an NFC title appearance, after a number 1 seed appearance, and all these different things, and now you finish 9-8, and it's just sour. It's just like you feel, I don't know the exact word, but maybe you're motivated now to go back to get back to that. It won't be the same. The team will not be the same. There will be changes on the team. Some guys are going to be locked in, but there's going to be some guys that are not there next year, and that's just the nature of the business. There's probably going to be some coaches that are not there. It just is what it is, and so you just see it as an opportunity probably wasted. I don't think the window is closed. I do think they still have some talent, but it's not as open as it was. I put it like that. And so, but I mean, like I said, I think they finished the season on a high note, and that's always good momentum going into the offseason.
So you've got a team that won the NFC North in back-to-back seasons, and then they end up finishing last in the division. You say that you think the window is still open, but there's obviously going to be some turnover. There was turnover last season. They lose their offensive coordinator. They lose their defensive coordinator. They're trying to replace parts on the fly. Dan Campbell takes over the play calling. Didn't really go as well as I thought it would, or you thought it would. You thought they were better off when he was strictly head coaching and spreading that energy and enthusiasm the way he does on the sidelines. But if you think the window is still open, what it's going to take to get over the hump? How far away are they, in your opinion? I mean, you've been on the field. You know what it takes. Maybe you have a better idea of just how far off they are when you watch the games, and maybe they're not as far off as some may think. But how much runway is left for this team the way it's constructed? A lot of their core is signed for the next several years, so they've got some key pieces in place. But there was definitely some fall off on both sides of the defensive line, the offensive line, some fall off. I don't know where you think things lie right now, so I'm interested in your take on that.
Well, I think they got to get better in the interior, offensively and defensively. Obviously, losing Frank Ragnow was a big loss last year, but now they got time to address the offensive line. So you got to shore that up for sure. Your offensive core is in place. Jahmyr Gibbs is there. I think David Montgomery is back. I don't really know his contract situation, but Jahmyr was locked in. Amon is locked in. Your offensive core guys, for the most part, skilled guys are going to be there. You need to shore up the interior, But I think it's the defensive side of the ball that we really got to look at. From a rush standpoint, you got a young star in Aiden Hutchinson. You know, you need somebody on that opposite side. And, you know, I bring this up because you look at, you know, another team that I'm familiar with is the Houston Texans, right? They got a young Will Anderson on one side, and they got a veteran Danielle Hunter on the other side that's putting up just as big. He's putting up 13 plus sacks from a veteran standpoint. And then you got the young bull and Will Anderson doing the same thing on the other side. So we need to find a consistent guy on the other side that can get pressure and take some of the pressure off of Aiden Hutchinson. And then when you look at the secondary, you got to have playmakers at the end of the day. I mean, I don't know if we had an interception, maybe one or two down the stretch of the season from the secondary. And so it's very difficult. It's very difficult to win tough games against good teams if you're not creating turnovers, you're not getting sacks, you're not doing any of those things. And so from the linebacker standpoint, yeah, you know, you may play the run pretty solid, but I mean, who's playmaking? Who's getting the ball? Who's somebody that we're feeling like, okay, we gotta account for this guy, or hey, it's time for a big play. We're expecting this guy to come through. And I don't know if they have that guy on the offensive side, I mean, on the defensive side of the ball and the linebacker. You know, it was Kirby Joseph in the secondary that will come through and make some interceptions for you. I don't know what's going on with him with his knee and you know how his career is gonna go. He missed the last 12 weeks of the season, I think it was. I think he went out like week 6 or 7 or something like that. So you know, what's gonna happen with Brian? I mean, it's just a lot of questions that I think they got to get some kind of playmakers in the secondary. And I just don't know if they got the money to do it. They got a lot of money tied up in a lot of guys. You know, Terrion is a first-round draft pick. You just paid Kirby. Brian is coming up. I just don't know if they got the money to get a playmaking type of cornerback, you know, somebody that Terrion can learn from, somebody that can take the pressure off Terrion so that he can continue to develop. I just don't know. I don't know. It's going to be tough. You know what I'm saying? And it just depends on, you know, I remember my first year in Detroit. I mean, we had Rasheem Mathis. You know, he was an older guy at that point, at that stage in his career, but he was a good veteran. He was a playmaker. You know, he had that ability to be a leader, to bring that aspect of the game. So you don't necessarily have to go and get a Derek Stingley type of guy right in the prime of his career that wants, you know, $25 million a year. But you probably can find like a good veteran corner that's been in the league, that's a playmaker, understands how to make plays, and can have some veteran leadership in that room. And so I'd be interested to see how they attack the defensive side of the ball. I think that's what they really got to shore up. They got to get some depth because obviously those guys are falling like flies. I mean, I think we have 14 guys on IR, the most in, like, so you got to find a way to stay healthy, and shore up the defensive secondary, defensive linebackers, and get somebody else that can be a pass rushing threat on the outside with Aiden, and somebody that can be, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how the first rounder develop over the offseason and going into his second year from a D-line interior standpoint. So they got a lot of questions. They got a lot of questions and things that they got to figure out for sure.
What gives you optimism that they can get to where they want to go? They can be a Super Bowl champion. They can win the NFC and get there in the next season or two.
Because for the last few years, I've always said that the Lions have performed better when they were the underdogs. They never performed well when they were the big dogs. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When they were the underdogs, when they had the chip on their shoulder and they were trying to prove to the world that we were this and we were coming and we were all these things, they were a different team. When they showed up and they were the guys and this and that, and, you know, we are the Detroit Lions. When they showed up like that, they got beat. So being humbled, you know, not even making the playoffs, And it's not like you make the playoffs and you get put out first round, And even though you get put out the first round, I mean, you only play one extra game, but it's just the fact that you made it to the playoffs. Not making it to the playoffs is just like a blah, blah. Just didn't make it, right? You wasn't even good enough to make it to the playoffs, right? And so that's a piece of humble pie that they will have to swallow. They will have to eat on it and eat on it and eat on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they start back hearing those same old Lions or this, and so sometimes that stuff just puts that chip back on your shoulder that they should always have, and you should always have that as a player, and you should always know that everybody's gonna love you when you're balling, when you're playing well. Everybody's gonna love you, right? And when you're not playing well, they're gonna say that. They're gonna talk about you. They're gonna, it is what it just that's just the way it is. So don't ever feel like you're exempt from that. Don't ever feel like, oh, no, you're not. You're one play away from being a bum. So just real talk. Just real talk. When I first got in the league, I had a coach, Garrett Kubiak. He used to always say it's the same distance from the penthouse to the poop house. You see what I'm saying? So it's the same distance. One play make you a hero, one play make you a bum. So
it's so true.
Put that chip on your shoulder and go back to work. And sometimes having a situation like this, especially when you got a good young core, this could be a motivating factor that goes into the offseason that puts that chip back on their shoulder, and then they still have that window that can come back next year and do that. But I ain't say it's closing. I ain't say it's closed, but it's closing.
Get your fingers out of the way. You don't
want
to get slammed.
Right.
So they didn't make the playoffs. Obviously, the fan base is disappointed. The players, the coaches are disappointed. Management, ownership disappointed. But there were some highlights along the way this season. There were some great games. You and I did this show when we were just raving about this offensive times, raving about some of the defensive plays, some of the youngsters who were performing along the way, and how bright their futures might be and what they're adding to this team. So let's just look at some of the positives along the way this year and some of the performances that we saw. Jahmyr Gibbs, simply outstanding. Amon-Ra St. Brown, outstanding at times. Jared Goff, outstanding at times. Jack Campbell, a hell of a season at linebacker, leading the team in tackles this year. Who would be your MVP if you were to look over things this year, and why?
If I had to go an MVP, offensive MVP, I would probably have to go with Jahmyr Gibbs. I just think he is such a dynamic player, and he controls so much of what happens offensively. When he's going, they're almost unstoppable. And we saw down the stretch these last three games or so, and when they held him down, they held the Lions offense down. I think if he comes through in those last three games, Steelers, the Rams, some of those games where they kind of like really focused in on lock. If he comes through and balls out in those games, he's a legitimate candidate for offensive MVP of the league. Mm-hmm. That's how well he was playing. Those three games down the stretch is kind of what took him out. And so I would have to give it to him. And the reason why I would say that is just because I just don't remember a game where Jared Goff won a game for us. I don't remember a game where Jahmyr was struggling. Like I say, you look down the stretch, right? Jahmyr's struggling or can't get going. I don't remember a game where Jared Goff just took it in his hands and threw for 500 or 400 or just won a game. So it'd be very difficult for me to say, okay, well, he's the most valuable player, because clearly he goes as Jahmyr goes. When Jahmyr is rolling, then it opens things up for Jared, and Amon is going to be the same way, right? So I have to give it to Jahmyr from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, I don't even know, man. I think by default you got to give it to Aiden, but I just don't know if I got enough big plays from Aiden in the big moments. I just, based off of how they play, you might have to give it to Kirby. even though he didn't play, he might have been the most valuable player because when he went out, we couldn't even get turnovers. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, I just don't. I didn't feel Brian Branch's presence as much. The linebackers, I didn't feel it. And like I said, Aiden is gonna probably get all those awards. He's gonna have the most sacks, but for me, I just didn't feel enough from him in the big games, the big moments, to say, okay, well, he's the MVP. But if you got to pick somebody, I guess you got to pick Aiden. I don't know who else you would pick.
Well, what's it say that you have to search your mind so deep to come up with a player, and then you're even questioning the player you come up with? What's that say about the state of things?
That they're not a playoff team. That's what it's saying. Every non-playoff team is probably saying the same thing. They probably say like, we played good on defense, but who we say is our most valuable? If you got somebody that you can clearly say balled out like that, then you probably was playing pretty good defense. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, everybody's just kind of playing average. That's why you're losing. That's why you're losing offensively, because everybody's just kind of playing average, right? So, yeah, we can say who's the best player on the team, but I'm saying, like, when you just start looking at impact and think like what game can you remember that somebody on the defense just took over and dominated? Like, the best defensive performances, they played well as a whole group. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Like, Aiden didn't have a 4 or 5 sack game that I can remember.
Mm-hmm. No, it didn't happen. There were big plays, big moments. I go back to that Baltimore game to close it out with that big play, that big sack on Lamar at the end of the game. But they're just moments. There weren't games, just moments.
But that's week 3.
Yeah, I got to go all the way back.
That's week 3. Week 4.
Yeah, another walk-off sack too. Was that against the Giants?
They're 2-9.
Yeah.
They were 2-9. Like, that's just to save the embarrassment of losing. Right?
Dude, you ain't lying.
That's to save the embarrassment.
That is a fact.
That's to save the embarrassment of losing. Like, yeah, that's a big play, but at the end of the day, bro, why we got to have a walk-off sack against the Giants to win? Right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, and I don't want to take away from that. I'm just saying, you're not going to get put in the MVP conversations by those plays against those type of teams. All right. Those are what we used to call stat games, right? Like, if you look at Myles Garrett, he broke the sack record, right? But he had a couple games where he had 4 sacks, 5 sacks, right? So when you play against teams or people that you should dominate, you gotta go dominate. Because when you play against some of the better teams, you're probably not gonna get 4 sacks. You might only get 1, right? I just don't know if we had that. That's what I'm saying. And I'm not saying it wasn't from the effort, because he clearly was playing hard, So I think he'll be better next year. He'll learn a lot. But it also helps if you got somebody on the other side or somebody in the interior. But it's just hard for me to say that we just had a straight up defensive animal that I would clearly say, oh, yeah, he was this, right? Yes, the guys that were playing, Aiden Hutchinson would be your defensive MVP. But I bet he even feels like he need to have a better season.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But we had Isaac Tesla on the show earlier this season. A lot of fun talking to him when we had him on. A lot of fun watching the kid play. I thought he was going to get a little more run than he did, but he ends up with 6 touchdowns on the year. Far and away the most outstanding rookie in those terms that I saw play this year. Like I said, I thought he would, with his play, deserve more looks throughout the season, but didn't get it. What are your thoughts on a guy they traded 3 picks to move up to get, and what he showed you this year, and what his future might look like?
I mean, I like him. I mean, I think he got great size. You know, he loves to play. He took advantage for the most part of the opportunities that he got this season, and you know, this will be a big offseason for him. I don't know if he's going to have a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what's going to
I would say
happen there.
yes. I would say yes.
But this will be a big offseason for him, and you know, this is the first, like, this is the tough thing about rookies going into second year. This is the first time that they get a break, and this is typically why they struggle in year 2 for the most part. Because if you think about it, they go into training camp going into their senior or junior or whatever year of college that they're in, and they play a whole college football season. Soon as that season is over with, now they're into draft preparation, training, all-star games, combines, interviews, pro days, training, right into the draft in April. Soon as the draft is over with and you get drafted, now you're right into the NFL offseason, rookie mini camps, OTAs, veteran mini camps, all these different things. And now you're training for NFL training camp that you have no idea what you're about to get into.
Right.
So you're training right into training camp, right into an NFL season that's 17 games long. And so when you finish that rookie year, whenever it's over with, you're just kind of like, I can finally breathe for a little bit.
Burnt to
You're tired.
Yeah,
You're tired. And so sometimes it just takes you a little longer to get back going. You just need to relax. You know, it just takes a little longer to get back going, right? But hopefully he can refuel quickly, get back to work, be motivated by the plays that he made, the potential that he has. I think they got to find a good role for him.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen enough to say he can be just a straight up X type of wide receiver, or we just going to put him out there one-on-one going against the top corner for the other team. I don't know if that's his role. Obviously, Amon is a slot guy. I feel like Tesla could be a bigger Amon in the run game per se. From a blocking standpoint, can be a good Z wide receiver going in motion and inserting and blocking and then sneaking out, but then that takes away from what Amon does. And you've paid Amon $100 million. So Tesla is going to have to find his way. That's just the way it is. He's just going to have to find his way as an X wide receiver and be a big target that they can count on. And if he can turn into that, it'd be a good thing, you know, be a good move to move up and make those picks. But I mean, for them to lock J-Mo up the way they did, I'm trying to figure out what role they got in mind for Tesla.
Well, he's got some talent. He just may force the issue with his ability, with his size, his ability to catch the ball too. So we'll see how it all shakes out in year 2 for him. But they do not make the playoffs. I know it's a Lions show, but since they're not in the playoffs, let's look to the playoffs and some teams that are. As we go to our FanDuel odds, your favorite part of the show, we'll look at the Green Bay Packers traveling to Chicago to take on the NFC North champion Bears, and they are giving the Green Bay Packers are giving 1.5 on the road with an over-under of 46.5 at Soldier Field next Saturday evening. What are your thoughts?
I think it could be a good game, man. I think Chicago will get the win. I think Green Bay, you know, I don't know what's going on with Jordan Love. I know he didn't play the last 2 weeks. I know he had a concussion or something, and I think the fact that they had the playoffs and stuff wrapped up with the Lions losing, I think they kind of just held him out, make sure he was all the way. But that can go either way, man. So with that, he's either going to come out on fire or he's going to come out struggling. And in the playoffs, I don't think you can come out and struggle for that first quarter, that first half before you can get going, because the playoffs are just different. The teams just play different. The schemes are different. The things that they're gonna do is just different. I was talking to my brother-in-law last night, and we were talking about Myles Garrett and the sack record and things, and I was just like, during the course of the season, you play a certain way. You know what I'm saying? You just live with certain things. Some things happen. You just got to live with that. But when it get crunch time, we're going to do certain things, right? Just is what it is. I'm like, if they wanted to, we could commit 2 people to Myles Garrett every single time and say, you're not going to get this against us. We can run away. We could do a lot of different things, right? But they're not going to do that the entire season. They're just going to play. But then when they get crunch time, we might, right? So they're not going to double team Amon every single play, all right? They're going to let it play out sometimes. But in certain moments, certain times, yes, we're going to do that, right? Well, in the playoffs, it's one game. It's one game. So if we need to, we will double you every third down if we need to. That's just what we got to do, right? If we need to, we will slide protection, chip block every single down so that you can't impact our game like that, right? So the playoffs are just different. It's a different game. And I just feel like Chicago has had some big momentum going down the stretch. They've won a lot of close games. I don't think they finished the season great yesterday with the Lions. But Green Bay has been downhill as well. I don't think they've gone into the playoffs with any momentum. Micah got hurt. Jordan Love been hurt. They haven't won the last 2. Like, they didn't win yesterday. I think Minnesota beat them, right? I don't think they're going into the playoffs with any momentum either. So I think Chicago get that win and keep it moving.
So let me give you a couple of more FanDuel odds before we wrap up the show and look at the playoffs here. Super Bowl odds. The Seahawks are plus 420. The Rams are second at plus 450. Denver then checks in at plus 650. Your defending Super Bowl champs, the Eagles, plus 850. And the Patriots, who had a great season, at plus 1,000. Those are the top 5. The AFC odds go to the Denver Broncos at plus 230. And the NFC goes to Seattle at plus 185. So of all of that, who's your Super Bowl champion? Who do you like? And what do you think of the odds of any of those teams that I just mentioned?
Well, just based off the history of the league and just my opinion, it's hard for me to go with the favorite right now. So that being Seattle, like I was saying, it's the playoffs, right? So Seattle's defense been playing great down the stretch, but I just feel like teams in the playoffs will they're going to make you beat them a different way. So Sam Darnold is going to have to lead them to the Super Bowl. They're going to do what they got to do to take away the run game that Seattle thrives off of and put the game in Sam Darnold's hand and see if he can do it. And if he can do it,
real.
Right. And if he can do it.
You believe in Sam Darnold?
No. But
okay.
If he can do it, I ain't got nothing against Sam.
No, I know.
I mean, he was a top pick, right? But I feel like it's a reason. It's a reason for everything. You know, it's a reason for everything. He's been around. So, if he can lead them though, they got a good chance. The defense is playing really well right now. I would probably have to say, me personally, probably would be the Rams.
Yeah.
Just because I do trust Stafford. I do like Stafford. 2 wide receivers in Puka and Devontae. Running backs that can run the ball. And then you got a defense. The secondary is a little shaky, but they got a defense good enough to make plays. Defensive front that can make plays. So they can stop your run game. And you don't want to get in the shootout with Stafford and Puka and Devontae. You don't want to do that. And so I think if it came down to it, I probably would have to go with the Rams. You can't ever count out the Eagles because they've been there. They got a good defense. They've kind of just been quiet these last few weeks, just kind of backpedaling into the playoffs.
Lurking in the shadows.
Yeah, but they still got, Jalen, who's been a playoff performer. They still got Saquon Barkley. They still got A.J. Brown. They still got Devontae Smith. They got guys. So you can't count out that Eagles team. So, the Eagles are the 3 seed. The Rams are the 6. No, the 5. So I think that could be your NFC playoff championship game. Rams and the Eagles.
Rams, Eagles. With those odds at plus 850, I'll take the Eagles. But if I was a betting man and just with my heart, I would take the Rams over who I think will win if I'm betting the odds and trying to make a little loot. I'll go with the Eagles to get it done, but it's going to be fun watching these teams battle it out in the playoffs. And we sure do wish that the Lions were participating. So before we wrap up the show, the Lions are not participating. This will be our last show talking about their hopes as far as that goes. So what will you leave the Lions fan base hopeful for as you wrap up our season recap for these guys?
Well, this is right here. This is what being a fan, being supporter is about. You ride with them through the highs, you ride with them through the lows. You can't jump off the bandwagon when it get low, and you can't jump on the bandwagon when it gets high. It just is what it is. So if you're going to be a true fan, we can all be disappointed. We can all be upset. We can all be these things, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. And we don't know why. Some teams are always there and some teams are never there. And you just got to stick with it. You got to stick with it. I think you still support the NFL, the playoffs. It's going to be an exciting time. And I've always felt like, even when I was going through, I just always felt like I can't hate on somebody for being where I want to be. You know what I'm saying? I can't hate on somebody for being where I want to be. I can't hate on somebody for having what I want to have, right? So if I want to be a Super Bowl champion, I need to watch the Super Bowl. I want to see what it's like. I want to see the feeling, the fans, I want to see it. Why? Because that's what I want. Yeah. I don't want to hate on it. I ain't going to watch the game. We ain't playing. No, I want to. I want to see it. I want to feel it. I want to feel the playoffs. I want to feel like I want to win it. So I want to watch the people that win it and see how they won it, how they prepared, how they did it, because that's the feeling that I want one day. So still support it. Enjoy your off season, recharge, refocus, put that chip back on your shoulder from a fan standpoint, from a player standpoint, put that chip back on your shoulder and let's go back to work.
Well said, sir. Well said. And there's lots of work to be done. That's for sure. Well, we appreciate all of you joining us for this episode of Bleav In Lions, brought to you by FanDuel. For Glover Quinn, I'm Trevor Thompson. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, and be sure to share and enjoy, everybody. Be safe out there. We'll see you soon.